Welcome everybody to our brand new channel, The Dread Ducket. So this channel is looking at urban myths and legends. Do you believe in the paranormal, the supernatural, ghosts, vampires and other spooky things? Well, stay tuned. So for this episode, we're going to have a look at vampire mythology. Do you believe in vampires? Are they real? Or are they something of science fiction and horror movies? So you've all heard of the film Nosferatu, the 1922 version, and also Robert Eggers' version, which are very good incidentally. You've heard of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So Bram Stoker wrote Dracula. I actually got this from Whitby, by the way. Fantastic at the Abbey. Brilliant. So you've heard these movies and stories of these vampires, but where do these stories originate? The stories all over the world of vampires, from China to Eastern Europe to the UK. Yes, the UK has its own vampire mythology stories. So for this, we're going to have a look at urban legends or urban myths of vampires, and I have 3 stories for you. So let's get into it. So the first story I have is a urban legend that you will not find on Google, and this was found in the depths of Reddit. So the story is about a submarine captain who cast no shadow. So picture this: you're in a pressurized tube, you're 200 meters below the sea, it's during World War II. Not only have you got to worry about depth charges and being hunted, on board it's dark, it's damp, it's eerie. You can imagine the crew getting uneasy. There was rumours starting in the mess hall, whispers about the captain who never touched his rations. A man who only walked on the bridge of the conning tower in the dead of night. His skin the colour of a funeral shroud. Now, they said he didn't just command the ship, they said he was part of it, feeding on it, feeding on them. Another part of the story is when a steward allegedly found a dark glass bottles hidden in the back of the captain's locker. Bottles filled with a thick crimson liquid. Now you can imagine the panic turned into a localized fevered dream. Was it medicine? Was it wine? Or was it something else? Or was HMS Vampire living up to its most literal, blood-soaked way possible? What do you think? So let's look at case file number 2 in our vampire series. So going back to 1970, Highgate Cemetery, which is in Hampstead area, and there was reports of foxes dying, blood drained. So basically, the end of the 1960s, locals began reporting that a tall grey figure was lurking behind the gates of Highgate Cemetery. Reports included a man in a Victorian top hat, and also a spectral cyclist. Now, this thing turned into a media frenzy, absolute media frenzy, which involved obviously the media, but also amateur vampire hunters. There is such a thing. And also a hunter by the name of David Farrant, I think I'll put his name there. I think I've said that right. So basically, February 1970, this David Farrant wrote a letter to the Hampstead and Highgate Express detailing his sighting of a supernatural entity. This opened the floodgates for others to share in this sort of terrifying encounter. So on Friday the 13th March of 1970, it was claimed a figure was actually a king vampire. A king vampire. Just like Dracula. And a mob descended on Highgate Cemetery. So they were climbing walls. They were hunting for this monster. The police were involved. So it was an absolute circus. A bit later on, August 1970, this David Farrant was found by police in the cemetery carrying a crucifix and wooden stake. Now, I think the story goes he was arrested, and he may have been arrested a couple of times for this so-called vampire hunting. Now, they had found some dead foxes with their throats slit and blood drained, so obviously this fueled more speculation. There was also rumours of a Valachian legend, which is basically where Vlad the Impaler comes from, which sort of loosely the story of Dracula is, what's the inspiration apparently. There's also been witnesses of ghosts and other paranormal activity. So at the time, Highgate Cemetery was overgrown. It had been vandalised. It was falling into ruin. So it was a really good, typical B-rate horror movie type of stuff. The catacombs had been destroyed and smashed up. There was all sorts of things going on. So during an investigation, what was actually found? Well, it was alleged, or it was said, there was no undead figures found in the cemetery. Maybe it went, like in the vampire films. There was desecrated graves. As I said before, this was being like a media frenzy. People were descending on this area, pretending to be vampire hunters. There was psychics. There was skeptics. There was all sorts of things going on. A big rivalry developed between David Farrant and somebody called Sean Manchester, who viewed this Highgate vampire as a typical satanic, demonic vampire. And these two had a feud. David Farrant was eventually sentenced to prison in 1974 for damaging memorials and interfering with dead bodies. Strange individual. The story now has legend status, and you can actually find this particular one on Google if you want to have a look at it. Now, was it a vampire? Was it a made-up, fabricated, like a creepypasta kind of thing? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. So guys, we're on to our third and final case file, and this is the story of the Coglin vampire. Now, this story is set in Victorian times near the Cumbrian Scottish border, and it was actually written by a travel journalist, and it is often cited as a genuine vampire account in British history. So genuine. So Coglin Low Hall, or in the story referred to as Coglin Grange, is a remote farmhouse in Cumbria near the Scottish border. So the story was first published by a travel writer, Augustus Hare, in 1896, and it's based on an autobiography, The Story of My Life, where he claimed to have a true account from his neighbour Captain Fisher about this story. So the events allegedly took place between 1875 and 1876, though some versions date it a bit earlier. So the first attack. So a young woman named Amelia Cranswell was staying at the Grange with her two brothers. On one hot summer night, while lying in bed, she noticed two glowing eyes staring through her window. Now, how freaky deaky is that? You're lying there in bed, minding your own business, and then two piercing red eyes are staring, looking at you. Now, the account is the creature did not smash the glass. It used long, bony. I thought I've just glitched then. It was just a glitch. Oh. So, glitch in the Matrix. So, going back to the story, it used long, bony fingernails to pick out the lead surrounding of the pane windows. So back in those days, glass in windows was fitted with lead, which we know is very toxic nowadays, to pick out the window pane. It reached in to the window and lunged at her. Now, she screamed, obviously, and her brothers rushed in. They found her bleeding from a jagged wound on her throat. Can you imagine that? You hear somebody scream, you run in, and there's a wound on their neck and blood coming from it. And apparently then the creature vanished into the darkness. Now, usually in these stories, when the vampire picks its victim, they keep coming back until that person is no more in the mortal coil. So, after a recovery trip to Switzerland, the family returned to Coglin. Amelia, now terrified of windows, insisted on keeping her shutters closed. So again, back in the days, you used to have like shutters on the front. There's a bit of information, back in the old days, there was actually something called the window tax. So if you've ever seen a house or a building with what looks like bricked up windows, it was actually to avoid paying certain taxes. I digress. So, she insisted on keeping the shutters closed. However, one night, the scratching returned. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Now, that would be terrifying in itself, wouldn't it? This time, the brothers were ready. When the creature appeared at the window, one brother fired a pistol. Boom! Hitting the entity in the leg. It scrambled away and limped to a nearby churchyard or graveyard. So the next day, the brothers and a group of villagers, so in the daylight, as you would, searched the graveyard. What they found sealed in a family vault, they found several coffins that had been smashed open and the bodies terribly mangled and mutilated. The alleged vampire, the only one coffin intact, when the coffin was opened, they found a shriveled brown-skinned body with fresh bullet wounds to its leg. Following the classic folklore at the time, the villagers dragged the body out and burnt it to ashes. So obviously they thought this thing was a vampire, and that apparently is recorded in an official history as a vampire sighting, interaction, whatever you want to call it. No, the girl didn't turn into a vampire from the bite. Probably got a bit of infection or something like that, I should imagine. The author of the story, this Augustus Hare, swore the story was true. However, historians have pointed out a couple of things that make the story potentially untrue. Apparently, there's no such thing as a Coglin Grange. So it's they think it was Coglin Low Hall, and that is not actually in any site of any graveyard. So again, you know, you tell a story, it develops, all that kind of thing. So those are the 3 British-based stories of vampires. Are vampires real? What do you think? None of these stories are the same as what we see in the movies. Dracula, incidentally, one of the greatest love stories ever written. Nosferatu, Twilight, sparkling vampires, really. In Eastern Europe, there are myths and legends, and still believed today, places like Serbia, Croatia. I think recently there was a news article where they had they were doing some archaeology and they dug up this grave, and there was the bones of a person, and it had gone through a ritual, what sometimes they used to do if somebody was suspected of being a vampire, where sometimes they used iron to pin the corpse to the ground. They would wedge a stone in the mouth, sometimes decapitate the head, and other things. And they've done a reconstruction of the face of this so-called vampire, which you can find online, and that was a recent story. So, what do you think, guys? Are vampires real? Or is it just a figment of our imagination? Please let me know in the comments below. Please give the video a like, or dislike if you didn't like it. And please subscribe. We're going to have many more videos coming up, and it's going to be centered around urban legends and myths. We're going to look at UFOs. We're going to look at ghost stories. And if people want it, I will do some reaction videos maybe later on. So this is the first video. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.